Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a lovely day. Today, I'm going to talk about the academic agent. I'm going to make a response to his video series. It's called Neema Parvini versus the right wing, or versus right wing ideas. And I know this came out about a month ago, so I'm a bit late. Well, I don't know. Is that late? Is that late to make a response a month later? I don't know. In internet terms, perhaps it is. It says a month ago. It's probably 2 months ago, but whatever. Let's do a response. He wants a response. I'll give the guy a response. I don't think he's going to watch my response, but nonetheless, I watched the whole thing at work. I even took notes. I never take notes on videos, but because there's like 8 of them, I took a few notes. And let's talk about this. Let's answer the academic agent. We've got how many videos are there? 8 videos. So we've got ethno-narcissism, racial superiority, nationalism, technophobia, the free market, declining birth rate, the bourgeoisie family is the highest good, and low IQ bigotry. These are the titles of his videos. I think he kind of just to give, instead of, it's going to be boring if we just go through it video by video, because if you make a video that's a list, that's always boring. So let's just get straight into it. Basically, I think he nails it in his first video, and in kind of like in the last video where he talks about ethno-narcissism is the first video, and the last video is low IQ bigotry. And you know, I don't want this to be an ad hominem attack, because you know, this is kind of like one of the problems when you're dealing with, like, you're defending ethno-nationalism. The thing about ethno-nationalism is that, well, you're defending your ethnos, so you're defending your people, so you're against other people. And so it's not just about ideas. It's not just about economic ideas or family ideas or religious ideas. It's about racial ideas. And so it's kind of impossible not to judge people for their race. I mean, that is what ethno-nationalism is. It's about judging people for their race and who they are, regardless of their qualities, regardless of whether they're good people or not. You know, it's a case of, yeah, that white guy over there, maybe he's not a very good person, but at least he's English. And so I prefer, you know, I'd rather deal with him than the nice, politely spoken foreigner, right? It's a case of family before strangers. It's a case of, like, you have a family member. I mean, essentially ethno-nationalism is you're extending the philosophy of family first to the whole nation, right? So if you have a family member and that family member's a bit of an asshole, you know, you still got to talk to them at Christmas, right? Because it's family, right? That's what ethno-nationalism is in a nutshell. So although I would like to address the academic agent's questions without using ad hominems, it's kind of impossible to do that, because he's attacking ethno-nationalism. And so the immediate response is going to be, well, sorry, Neema, you're not English. And that's just the where else can I go? Where else can I go, guys? I mean, let's get the elephant in the room and let's just talk about it right at the beginning. He's not English. He's half Iranian. I think his mother is Welsh, and I'm not even sure if I think he was raised in England. But he's a half caste. He's half here and he's half there. He's all over the place. And so, like a lot of half castes that do end up getting involved in politics, and a lot of them actually get involved in ethno-nationalism. Over the years, I've seen quite a few. They get involved in these subject matters, I suppose, because they question themselves and they question their own identity, because they look in the mirror and they think, well, you know, am I white or am I Jamaican? Am I white or am I an Indian? Am I white or am I an Iranian? And so they ask these questions, and then they end up going down the rabbit hole and discovering ethno-nationalism and getting involved in politics, and etc., etc. I'm not saying that's what Neema Parvini's done. I think he was a Shakespeare professor or something, wasn't he, first? But I guess after he stopped talking about Shakespeare and started talking about politics, obviously these questions are going to come up, and so whatever the case, it's impossible to talk about what he said without pointing out the fact that this guy's not English, and he doesn't fit in, and he doesn't fit into the dissident right, and he doesn't fit into this growing English ethno-nationalism. And so he's just thrown his toys out the pram, and he's decided, that he's going to declare himself to be centre-left. And he's made a bunch of videos on the internet talking about far-right bigotry and how it's bad. And it's just like, well, yeah, it kind of is bad. I mean, it can be bad. It's peer pressure. Peer pressure always has a nasty side to it. Peer pressure is judgmental. But that's how a conservative society is built. It's built on peer pressure, right? You see a woman, she sleeps with a lot of guys, and you call her a slag. And women understand it, and they don't want to be called a slag, and so they're careful about how they behave. The men, on the other hand, you make fun of them, you call them weak, you call them cowards, and they don't want to be called weak, and they don't want to be called cowards, and so they're careful about how they behave. And in a similar way, when it comes to foreigners in your country, you're a little bit rude to them. And they feel the pressure. I don't belong here, and so they realize that they don't belong. So there is a hard edge to not just ethno-nationalism, but I think all conservative ideas, because they're judgmental. And what the left wing is doing is it's trying to say, well, don't judge, don't be so judgmental, be forgiving, accept everybody, accept everything, and then you end up with furries, right? You end up with furries. You end up with, in my local school, I was talking to a kid that went to my local school. He's left it now. He must be like 17 now. But he said that in the school, there's one part of the school. At playtime at school, everybody goes to their own like spot. There's one spot where the furries would sit, right? And they'd sit there, and kids would walk past, and they would growl at them, right? This is what you end up with when you stop the bullying. Okay, this is what you end up, because in the 90s, if anybody tried that, they'd get the gay bullied out of them. When I went to school in the 90s, there were no gays in my year, because it was bullied out of them, right? And that's how a good civilization should work. And I have to say here, I don't actually like bullies. Obviously, I don't consider myself to be a bully, and I don't bully people. But there is a kind of football hooligan element to British nationalism and to ethno-nationalism, and that just kind of is what it is. It's, 2 World Cups and 2 World Wars and 1 World Cup. It's England. That's the beating heart of the thing. And it's us making fun of the French, making fun of the Germans, making fun of the Americans, making fun out of everybody, making fun out of the foreigners. And it should be done in good humour. And sometimes it's a bit dark and it's a bit nasty, but mostly it's done in good humour. I mean, if we're making fun of the French, it's every Englishman's duty to make fun of the French, to have a little bit of low IQ bigotry towards those weirdos across the English Channel that like to eat frogs' legs and etc. It's the nature of the thing, which is why I really dislike German ethno-nationalism, and I really dislike the way that this hatred of Churchill and this love of Adolf Hitler has poisoned British nationalism. In fact, I've just been digging through. I'm doing a kind of a revision at the moment and going through some of my old videos, and I'm going to remake some of them. But I've been going through a lot of my old videos I got stored on my hard drive from various different deleted YouTube channels. And I found one of Horace. Remember Horace? Remember that guy? I think he's still around. He is still around. I like the guy. Nice guy. Friendly. But I found a video of him, and he's talking about how we have to pay reparations to Germany. We really should all the countries of Europe should apologise to Germany for the Second World War. And it's like, what are you talking about, mate? Like, what are you talking about? This is poison. This is going against the spirit of nationalism. So, yeah, there's always going to be a bit of a lowbrow kind of, using the N word, using the C word, using the P word, you know, just F off you foreigners. I mean, that is always going to be the nature of the beast in national. I mean, I say in ethno-nationalism, real nationalism is ethno-nationalism. Civic nationalism isn't really a thing. Civic nationalism is a new invention that's appeared in the 20th century. But so to nationalism, there's always going to be this. It's got to have some teeth. It's got to have some teeth to it. It's got to have a bite to it. Otherwise, it's harmless. And I've experienced this myself. One of the reasons why I am an ethno-nationalist is because I lived in foreign countries, and I lived in Brazil, and they were like, "Hey, gringo, hey." You know, I lived in India, and it's like, "Hey, Videshi." Videshi means foreigner, right? When I lived in Hong Kong, they called me white pig. Okay. And it's just like you travel around the world and you live in different places and you realize that you don't fit in and the locals don't really like you that much because you're not from there and you don't belong there. So it's like, oh, well, I better go home then, right? So I mean, so to criticize ethno-nationalism or to criticize right-wing politics on the internet for low IQ bigotry just says to me that, first of all, Neema Parvini doesn't understand it, and also he's just been on the receiving end of it, and so he's decided to jump ship, and he's decided to say, well, I'm on the left wing now, I'm centre left, and it's a massive betrayal, by the way. It just says to me the guy's got no, he doesn't really understand the English, he doesn't really love our country, he's not really a nationalist. And it is a massive betrayal, actually. And I mean, I'm not really upset by it because I never really liked the guy. So I always considered him to be a massive traitor. Well, I have done at least for the last 5 years. So I'm not really shocked by it. But I mean, I think if for people out there who are fans of Neema Parvini, I don't know how they could tolerate him making like 8 videos in a row and declaring that people on the right are just low IQ bigots. Like, whose side are you on, mate? Do you know what I mean? Pick a side. Oh, well, you have picked a side. You've declared that you're on the centre left. And why has he done that? Probably because he wants to get a spot on the BBC or something like that. He wants to go. I mean, he wants to go on the BBC. This is just like, it reminds me of what was the name of that guy? Matt Heimbach. Yeah, remember that guy? That guy was famous in the alt-right in the early days. Then he ended up living in a trailer and he drank too much. He had sex with his friend's wife, and you know, it's just like total disaster. And then he pops up a few years later saying he regrets being in the alt-right, he regrets being a Nazi, he's against racism now. So this whole series of videos just kind of stinks of that to me. Stinks of that kind of thing. Like I could easily see him doing a BBC interview and saying how he's rejected right-wing politics on the internet because it's too racist. I mean, this is just real. He can't be that stupid that he doesn't realise that people are going to see it that way. So I think we have to hold people to standards, to be honest with you. Like I say, I never liked the guy, so it doesn't really affect me that much. I mean, it's really just like, for me, this whole thing is just him showing his real face. But I would expect his followers to be more angry. Because he's got no character. How can you declare yourself to be right-wing and then just move over to the left in such a casual manner? The left are the enemy. The left are the people that are destroying civilization. The left are anti-family. The left are pro-homosexuality. The left are pro-immigration. The left are destroying our country. And just in such a casual way, he makes these videos and he's like, there's nothing intellectual on the right wing. No, there's nothing intellectual. All the clever people are on the centre left. And I think I'm going to go over there. Well, oh my God. Glad to be rid of you, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I will say that when I went to school, I remember that, by the way, when I went to school, everybody in my school was white. I think we had like one Indian guy and one black guy in the whole school, right? But I remember that the racists would sit on like the back at class, and they wouldn't be very nice people, and they'd tell a whole bunch of N-word jokes and C-word jokes and this kind of thing. And I was always kind of like disgusted, but I didn't like it because there was kind of like a bullying element to it, which I thought was just nasty. And I also remember, like, I had a friend who used to like to make fun out of black people and use the N-word, and he was a bully. And this was back in the noughties, right? And then when the whole alt-right exploded, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about ethno-nationalism and white genocide and etc on the internet, I approached this friend and I talked to him, and he wasn't interested at all. And it was really quite shocking to me, because it was like, well, this guy isn't interested in the philosophical side of ethno-nationalism. He just likes to bully minorities, right? That's what he's into. He's just a bully. And so I think there are people like that out there, and they do get involved in ethno-nationalism, and they're not nice people. So there is a certain truth to this. There is a certain nasty element to the nationalist movement. In fact, I think there's that quotation, isn't it? Yeah, I just looked it up. Patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Yeah. Samuel Johnson. And I think there's some truth in that. Although I will say, on the other hand, there are some horrible people in the left wing as well. They're just a different type of horrible. There are a lot of absolute scumbags in the left wing who basically they're victims, and they're weak, and so they get off on playing the victim. They get off on defending victims. They get off on defending the outgroup, and it makes them feel like they're good people. Right? And I know a group of people like this as well. I know some, like, a middle class white family, and they're just bragging about how their daughter's gone off to like preach in some foreign country or something like this, and it's just like, you want to go and preach in Rotherham, right? But these people are completely anti-racist. They're pro-immigration. They're into all of the left-wing subject matters, but they think that they're good people because they're caring for Bangladeshis and they're caring for starving children in Africa. And it's like, mate, the country's falling to pieces. You're just giving all of your love to the outgroup because it's easier to do that. It's easier to love somebody on the other side of the world than it is to love your next door neighbor. And I've had this experience. These left-wing types that have an overwhelming love for outgroups. If your car breaks down and you need some help, they won't help you. They're not there for you. They don't look after their own. They look after the other because it's easier. You see what I'm saying? So I think in the left and in the right, there's scumbags, to be fair. I think, yeah, it just, there's definitely a lot of low IQ anti-racists on the left. So anyhow, final point on this. I mean, let me just say that I'm actually not bothered that Neema Parvini is half Iranian. The way I see it, throughout history, if you marry into the tribe, you're part of the tribe. That's always genuinely been the rule. I have heard that in Japan, it takes like 2-3 generations to actually really be accepted as Japanese. So if you marry a Japanese girl, you live in Japan, your children will not be considered to be Japanese. They'll be considered to be half Jap or whatever. And then that will continue until you're fully bred in, which I think is fair and reasonable. So, I'm not 100%. Like, I think, like, if you're a foreigner and you marry an English girl, or you're an English man, you marry an English girl and you bring her over, a foreign girl and you bring her over here, that's fine. That's okay. That's always been going on. It's probably going on more now because the technology's changed, so people can get on a plane, they can fly to Thailand. So maybe it's a bit of a problem, but some kind of like 5% miscegenation or something like this we can tolerate. And besides which, just from a moral point of view, I just don't think I don't think we would be against it. It's going to be hard to convince people to kick out, that half-caste girl that they went to school with, who's got an English mum and a Jamaican dad or whatever it is. Because they're just going to say, well, her mum's English. So moving forwards, my attitude is what I think the message we should be preaching is a message of we want England to be majority white. This is my latest slogan, which I think we should rally behind. Because if you say this, it gives you plausible deniability. Let's say you go to work and there's an Indian at work and he's like, oh, you're a racist. You can just say, well, I just want England to be majority white, right? And it's like, well, that's not unreasonable, is it? Because this is a white country built by white people, so we should remain in the majority. That's fair, isn't it? And if they're against that, then it just tells you, well, they're crossing a line. Then now they hate you and they want you to be a minority. But it gives you plausible deniability, because you can say to your Indian quote unquote friend at work, you can just say, well, not you, mate. You're all right. Yeah, you're all right, mate. Yeah, you're one of the good ones. You got a job. You're not like those lazy ones sitting on the dole. Do you see what I'm saying? So in whatever situation you are in your personal life, you can take a moderate ethno-nationalist position by saying you want England to be majority white, and that can stop you getting into these interpersonal conflicts. Because let's admit it, like, most people are not political fanatics. They might be worried about immigration, but they don't want to be rude to the people that live around them. So you need a slogan that they can rally behind. You need an idea that they can rally behind that's not just going to upset everybody that they work with or that lives nearby or that they meet in the pub, or etc, etc, etc. Do you see what I mean? It's very difficult to take a hard ethno-nationalist position, because then you're essentially attacking everybody. You're attacking all the brown people and you're declaring war on them because you're saying you want to kick them all out of the country. So I don't think that's the path forward. I think we say we want a majority white England, and then we just, what does that mean? 70%, 80%, 90%, 95%? You know what I mean? It's open to interpretation, isn't it? So that's my solution to that. Let's try and cover some of these points he's raised. Yeah, so in the very first video, he talks about elite human capital, and basically he gives some analogies of football teams that bring in foreigners. He gives a very stupid analogy of a video game, which obviously doesn't make any sense at all, but he plays like this empire building video game and he brings in foreigners into his video game, and he talks about big firms in the city, and they hire a bunch of Chinese high IQ Chinese mathematicians, and they're the best people for the job. So basically he pushes the idea of elite human capital, and he pushes the idea that we need this to win. We need this so we can perform on the global stage, right? First answer to this is I don't really care about performing on a global stage. I'd rather be poor and live in a white country than rich in a multicultural country. And I think most people would agree with that, because there are different conceptions of wealth, isn't there? Well, one conception of wealth is how much money do you have in your bank account, and another conception of wealth is, do you feel safe, and do you feel part of a culture and a community that is yours and belongs to you, and that you can pass on to your children. So most people want that solidarity in their community and in their people and in their nation. And they would much prefer that to having some, super intelligent, 150 IQ Chinese maths wizard who's doing some, magic in some basement in the city of London, sending money around the world and gambling on the stock market or whatever he's doing, right? Most people would prefer to be poor and live in a ethnocentric, homogeneous nation than to have to deal with a bunch of weird foreigners. So that's the first answer. But the second answer is, we conquered the world. We're English. We conquered the world. We have enough elite potential within us. We don't need foreigners. And I think it's kind of offensive to suggest that we do. And I think, even when it comes to football players, I don't know why they are bringing in foreign. I think they just bring in foreign football players because it's a way of brainwashing the masses to accept foreigners, to be honest with you. It's a way of brainwashing them, all the football hooligans, the Tommy Tards, to accept, oh yeah, we need an Italian player, a Spanish player, a Brazilian player, a German manager, etc., etc., etc. We need a multicultural. I'm not into football, so but we need multiculturalism in English football. Blah blah blah. No, we don't. Not really. Actually, I'm sure we could generate enough great football players by ourselves. And I think if you start relying on foreign elites, you stop promoting your own elites and you stop educating them. And classic is, I'm not a fan of the NHS, but I do hear this all the time. People saying that we're bringing in foreign nurses instead of training our own. Personally, I'd scrap the NHS and give us all a 200 billion tax cut. But whatever, point taken. If you're going to have the NHS, at least you should employ and train English people, right? And staff it with English people. It should be an easy job for them instead of an easy job for foreigners. It's like the absolute worst idea. Best idea, scrap the NHS. Second best idea, run the NHS and only employ and train English people. Absolute worst idea, have an NHS that just employs foreigners. In fact, I've heard Peter Hitchens call it that once. An institution for foreign employment, which it is. It is literally a way, because they're bringing all these foreigners in and they've got to give them a job. It's like, we'll give them a job in the NHS. They can be a nurse in the NHS. There you go. There's a job for you. Okay? So, and then it gives them justification, because then they say, well, we need more. We need more. Right? What an evil institution. But in regard to elite human capital, I mean, we've just seen this play out in America with the H-1B visas. An entire generation of coders just been rejected. They can't get jobs in Silicon Valley. White people struggle to get a job in Silicon Valley. There's a article which is blown up on Twitter, which is shared by Elon Musk and other people this week, which has been talking about how they made the deliberate decision back in like 2014 or whatever to promote racial minorities and to exclude white men, and that's what's happened over the last decade, which is why, surprise surprise, ethno-nationalism has blown up over the last decade. I think BlackRock may be at the bottom of all of this, but nonetheless, this is what's happened. So Neema Parvini suggesting that we need foreigners to fill these elite roles. Number one, I'd rather be poor. Number two, we conquered the world and we've got enough elites. And number three, we should be training our own and promoting our own. And the moment you start, filling in elite positions with foreigners, you stop training your own and promoting your own. And then all of a sudden you've got these super qualified young white men that can't get a job in the city of London. And you end up with a racial nepotism that works against the white man. He talks about only 10% of rich families hold on to their wealth over like 3 generations or something like this. And he mentions that like if you can hold on to your wealth for 9 generations, then you are amazing. Which is why the Rothschilds are respected, because 8 generations I think they're on now. But anyway, the point being, he's making that this family wealth doesn't last. The oligarchs don't last. What lasts is talent. And he makes the point that the Roman Empire was very good at this, bringing talent in from other places. All this may be true. I don't think we should be following the example of the Romans. So I think this is one of the great mistakes our civilization has made. To be honest with you, look into the Romans for inspiration. We're not Romans. We're Germans. Our people comes ultimately from Denmark and from Scandinavia and from Woden. That's where we come from, and we always had a different culture to the Romans, and this is why I promote democracy, not because it comes from the Romans or I'm inspired. Well, I'm reading Livy's History of Rome, and it's a great book. It's interesting, but ultimately I support democracy because this is how we used to run things in ancient Germany. The king would have a thing. And this is before Christianity. The king would have a thing, and which means that he'd gather all the men together and they'd have a discussion about things. And this wasn't democracy or a parliament as we see it today, but it was, people would get their say. People would have the opportunity to speak out and to speak to the king. It wasn't an autocratic, absolute monarchy. We never had that in Germanic society. Germanic society was always free to a certain extent. And of course, as I keep saying, the word husting comes from the thing. And also, as I've learned recently, Swiss democracy, the direct democracy of Switzerland, also comes from the thing. There's a big German word, which I'm just going to have to, it's a difficult word. It's a difficult word. But, you know, they have these big meetings in the cantons, in the mountains. This originates all the way back from the thing. So the point I'm making is, like, the Roman Empire was always multicultural. Even the very foundation of Rome. You have Romulus and Remulus. They build Rome, and it's all men. So what do? And where do they get the men from? They just invited a bunch of miscreants from all over the place to come together, and they became the Romans. And then, of course, they kidnapped the women. You have the rape of the Sabines, right? They kidnapped a bunch of women from elsewhere, and they created essentially a kind of slave state. You know, patricians and plebs, and it's very interesting reading Livy. I mean, it's very interesting. I'll finish it soon, and I'll make a video about it. But they essentially create a slave state. The patricians ruling over the plebs rebel. They want to be represented in Parliament as well, and you know, they go and sit on a hill outside, and then it's like, okay, we'll give you your tribunes or whatever, and you know, it's like 80 or 90 years of political turmoil, and every single like every 1 or 2 years they have a war. Like, these people are fighting all the time, which I suppose was just the way things were back then. But it seems like Rome just became a very, very big multicultural city straight away, because it's built on foreigners. That's who founded it. It's always been multicultural, not like the Germans. The Germans were different. The Germans were much more clan-like and free. They didn't build an empire like the Romans. You had lots of individual kingdoms, and you had more liberty. So I think when we're looking at European history, we have to understand you've got the free Germans in the north, and you've got the Roman tyranny in the south. And we kind of have to pick a side. Now, obviously, England, like, we built the British Empire, and the British Empire is kind of a replication of the Roman Empire. So I do understand this. But nonetheless, I think, you know, if you trace English liberalism back to its roots, it doesn't go back to Rome. It goes back to the thing. It goes back to Denmark. So looking at the way the Roman Empire behaved and trying to transplant that and put that kind of imperial model onto us is not the right way to think about it. We should think about what our German ancestors would have done. But anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. But right, so I've just got halfway through this video. I've realised I've actually got a bit of a massive cold, because I was freezing last night, actually. The problem with me is I don't really pay too much attention to the environment that I'm in. I never pay attention to whether it's too hot or too cold. I don't really look after myself, I think. And I've just realised that the reason I couldn't sleep last night is because I was bloody cold. And yeah, my brain's pretty foggy. But the funny part is that despite the fact that I've got a bit of a cold and I feel quite foggy, I can still do a response to the academic agent, because none of these points are really that hard to deal with. But anyway, he goes on and he says, I'll just keep drinking coffee, get through this video. He goes on and he says that, and also his videos aren't really that professional either. I mean, let's be honest. He rambles a lot. You know what I mean? So anyway, he goes on and he says that the internet right, is worrying about birth rates, collapse of birth rates. And he says that the collapse of birth rates is not a bad thing. Actually, of course, this happened after the Black Death. About half of the population was wiped out. Maybe it was a third, maybe it was half, but whatever the case, it was a lot of people. And this led to an explosion in the value of labor. All right, so in any country, you always have an eternal war between capital and labor. Which one's more valuable? People that own stuff or people that work? Okay, currently in our civilization, capital is overvalued. Currently in our civilization is in a death spiral because we have a boomer generation. They own all the capital, they've got all the money, and not only do they own all the capital, but they're also forcing the younger generation to work and to pay taxes to maintain their pensions. So they own their houses, but they also want a pension, right? They also want a pension in their old age, despite the fact that they've got their homes and they live their lives and whatever. So they want their pension. So they're crushing the younger generation. The younger generation can't afford to buy houses. They can't afford to start families. And so the younger generation is shrinking, the population is shrinking because of this, and then they have the genius idea of, well, there's not enough young people to work to pay for our pensions. Let's invite a bunch of foreigners in, and they'll pay for our pensions. And this is the death spiral in which we are caught. So capital is winning out over labor, and the value of labor is getting pushed down in our civilization, which is why everybody's very, very unhappy. And the boomers obviously were born into a culture in which labor was highly valued. And I've heard this story from my boomer parents. Back in the day, in the 60s and the 70s, you could walk out of your job and walk into another one in 2-3 days time, right? People wanted a hire, and there weren't enough people for the jobs. And that's the ideal situation that you want to be in. That is a beautiful economy. Because then it ensures that everybody gets paid a high wage. And there was no need for a minimum wage back then. Tony Blair brought the minimum wage in. I guess everybody's just used to it now. They think it's normal, but it's actually a new invention, really. And I remember them having the debates about it back in the late 90s, like whether we need it or not. But ideally, you don't need a minimum wage to protect the wages of people. If the value of labor is strong, then people will get paid a good wage. You see, So what am I trying to say here? The academic agent says people on the right are worrying about declining birth rates. Yeah, declining birth rates would not be First of all, there's a reason why birth rates are declining, and that's because the boomers have all the capital, and they're sucking up pensions from the younger generation, and so this is making the birth rate decline. So it's not just a natural process. Okay, birth rates declined in the Middle Ages because of the plague. Birth rates in the current age are declining because of the boomers and because of pensions and because of the welfare system. And this is a problem with democracy. And I am a defender of liberalism and democracy. But nonetheless, I acknowledge that this is a problem that should be fixed. And I think that ideally, if you're getting benefits, if you're getting welfare from the government, you should lose your vote. Because one of the problems with liberalism is that you give out a little bit of welfare and a little bit more and then a little bit more. And then before you know it, you've got an entire welfare class who form a voting bloc and they just demand welfare. And every government gives them everything they want because they want to get into power. And this is the situation that we have. People like to talk about unemployed people and single parent mothers and stuff. But they are not the real problem. The problem is the pensioners. You see. Triple lock. Every government does what the pensioners want. They are the driving force of our democracy, and nobody will criticize them because they don't want to criticize old people because that's mean. That poor old granny. That poor old granny is destroying our country. Okay, she's burning our country to the ground. Because if she wanted to stop immigration, she would. But she knows she'll be dead in 10 years' time, so she's just going to ride it out. And that's the sad truth. But anyway, I talked all about this in my previous video, The Boomers. Go and watch that if you're interested. Yeah, so he's ignoring the fact that birth rates are declining for a reason. Okay, he's saying, oh, this is just part of the cycle or whatever. Well, cycles happen for reasons. But whatever the case, yeah, sure, the declining birth rates wouldn't be such a problem if we were a homogeneous ethnic society like Japan, okay? Because then there's declining birth rates should lead to rising wages for the younger generation, which should balance the thing out again, okay? Of course, this isn't happening because it's getting repressed by pensions. I don't know what the situation is in Japan or Korea. Obviously feminism's got a lot to do with it as well. But as I say, the thing should balance it out. But if you have declining birth rates and you're importing foreigners, then that's it. You're dead. You're finished. And we are dead and finished, by the way. I don't want to be a doomer here, but we're finished, right? And I've always been positive. Last 10 years on the internet, making videos on the internet, I've always been positive. We've kind of lost, guys. You can get arrested in this country for criticizing Muhammad, for criticizing Islam. So who's in charge? Islam's in charge. So it's not a case of are we going to lose? It's more of a case of we've already lost and they're crushing us. They are consolidating their power now. That's all that's happening. Which is, by the way, is why I don't like the academic agent, because he told everybody vote 0 seats. Okay? Here's the origin of that meme. It's impossible to judge how much effect this had on the real world population. It's very difficult to know how much effect Twitter has on ordinary people. But nonetheless, it didn't help. It didn't help. And so, partly because of the academic agent, Tories are out, Labour's in. The academic agent literally told people to vote for the Tory party, for the Labour Party. Okay, and now he's moved over to the centre-left, and now he's talking about how much he admires Blair and Stalin. Okay, guys, hello, wake up. The half-caste guy that posed as an Englishman for a long time, sitting on the internet, right? He had that white picture. We didn't know what he actually looked like. He's told everybody to vote for Labour, and now he's moving to the centre-left. His work is done. Okay, I don't know. I mean, is this a psyop? Was he paid to do it? I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing that's happened naturally. But whatever the case, this is not good. And people in response to that will say, I get tired about talking about this every video. Oh, you're a Tory, but no, I'm not a Tory boy. The Tories are shit. The Tories are rubbish. I've talked about this in multiple videos. But in 2024, what should have happened is the South should have voted Tory. The North should have voted Reform. Then we could have crushed Labour, and we'd have Tories versus Reform in Parliament now, and that would be a great situation to be in. We could have done that. I talked about doing it. Nobody listened to me. People listened to the academic agent instead. They got filled with emotion. 0 seats, bang in the head. 0 seats, 0 seats. This is childish. Okay, childish behaviour. This is just hatred. This is accelerationism. This is just anger. You're not thinking in an objective way, in a clear-minded fashion. You have to start with the assumption that all politicians are scum and we hate them, but we're going to use them. Don't give me this daddy issues. Oh, Boris Johnson didn't do exactly what I wanted him to. No, of course he didn't. He's a scumbag. They're scum. Right? We are ruled over by scumbags. Start with that. Get your daddy issues out of the way. Go in the corner and cry for a little bit, if that helps, and then start to think objectively about how we can save the country. And in order to save the country, we're going to have to vote for scumbags. Farage is a scumbag. Okay? Now, I think Rupert Lowe's good. I think he's not a scumbag. God almighty, I hope he becomes leader of the Tory party or whatever and saves us. But, I mean, who knows if that'll happen. But anyway, point being, in order to save the country in 2024, we should have voted Tory in the South, Reform in the North, could have saved the country. Did we do that? No, we followed an accelerationist meme driven forward by half Iranian who loves Tony Blair. Okay, and it may well be the end of our country. I don't know if we can make it to 2029. I think we should march on Parliament and demand a general election. Oh, but guess what? Guess who says we can't do that? The academic agent. Okay, because the academic agent believes in elite theory and he thinks that populism doesn't work, which is just false. Because they've had a revolution in Bulgaria, they've had a revolution in Sri Lanka, they've had a revolution in Bangladesh, apparently. They've had a revolution in Nepal recently, in recent years. They also, the Yellow Jackets, marched in Belgium, and the Prime Minister or President was forced to step down. That was back in 2018. So there are revolutions that happen even today. And in response to this, you'll say, well, those revolutions were organized by the elites. Yes, of course they were. Of course there are elites leading in the background. So, I mean, okay, so elite theory. Yes, you need leaders. You need people to lead. You need a certain section of the elite to take a populist opinion and then to use the people against the other elites. That's how you fix things. Obviously, just a random mob is not going to achieve much. Okay, it's just an expression of anger. It's just lashing out. You need effective leadership. So, yeah, I mean, that's obvious. So I guess the answer to elite theory is yes, elite theory is good, but what we need is our own elites. We can create our own elites, our own leaders, and then we can encourage the population to follow those leaders, and then we can march on Parliament, and then we can overthrow the government. So it is doable. And what I dislike about the elite theory is that it's just it's a wet flannel. It's disheartening. It's demoralization, essentially. The way it's being used is demoralization. I mean, the idea that we are ruled over by elites is just a truism. Of course, it's true that we're ruled over by elites and that the population are subordinate to the elites. But it doesn't mean that the population has no power at all. That's just retarded. Because the elites spend a huge amount of time and effort brainwashing the population and managing them and controlling them. In the same way that a farmer, herds a flock of sheep. Does it mean the flock of sheep have no power? Well, they can run off, right? That's why he's got to use a sheepdog to keep them under control. So yes, the population is a herd. The point is, become the elite, or distract the herd away from the farmer and the sheepdog and get them to follow you instead. And the question is that possible or not? And I think yes, of course it is. Get famous. I mean, there's nothing to say that what I want to do is impossible to achieve. If you get the leaders on your side and you demand that we march on Parliament and overthrow the government, you get enough of them on your side, you make enough of a big noise and a big voice, you get the ball rolling, it could happen. This is not some fantasy. We're not talking about flying pigs. We're not talking about pie in the sky. We're not talking about riding the tiger. We're not talking about forming a secret society and maybe we'll save the country in 300 years' time. This is a doable, achievable thing. It has to happen. It has to happen probably next year. Otherwise, they're going to have a Sharia law police force. We're going to have another 2, 3, 4 million foreigners in the country by 2029. We'll probably be rejoin the European Union. We probably won't even have the pound anymore. We'll have the euro. We might even merge the British Army with the European Army. All kinds of very, very bad things can happen between now and 2029. I do not think we can wait till 2029. But obviously the academic agent in response to that will say, well, it's impossible. The elites run everything. Just give up. And most people go along with it because that's easy. It's easy to be a doomer, right? So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what's up. Anyway, and I mean, while we're talking about why I hate the academic agent, I also hate him because he's anti-Churchill, and he's very emotional about that as well. Again, whenever you see people getting really, really emotional, You got to have a little look and think, what's going on there? But it's just like, I've just seen videos of him. SJJ just showed me like several videos of the academic agent. He's like, oh, Churchill, he's smoking a cigar, he's fat. It's just like, mate, you're just filled with hatred. You're not thinking in a rational manner. David Irving is the same in his book, Churchill's War. Exactly the same thing. You open a book, first thing, it's Churchill's fat and he's smoking a cigar. It's the same thing, same rhetoric. Okay? Starts with an ad hominem. If it starts with an ad hominem, you've got a problem. The fact of the matter is, Churchill did not start that war. Hitler did. He invaded Austria. Churchill did not force him to invade Austria. If Hitler had not have invaded Austria, the war would not have happened. Hitler could have been the National Socialist dictator of Germany for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Or whatever. And there would have been no war. That's just a fact. Neville Chamberlain did not want to start a war with Germany. So how did the war start? Well, Hitler invaded Austria. That was the first domino, and then boom, 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 boom. That's just a fact. Sorry. So to blame it all on Churchill is absurd. Churchill didn't tell Hitler to invade Austria. You could compare Churchill to Henry Bolton, right? The neocon, the psychopath. I mean, maybe. I don't think that's true, but you could. But nonetheless, even if like a character even if Third World War does kick off and Henry Bolton starts blowing things up all around the world, the question will come, well, who started it? Who invaded what? Okay, who actually kicked off? You see? And then, of course, we get into the analogy with Russia. Well, Russia's different. Russia's not Germany. Russia's a big country, lots of natural resources, a big army, difficult to destroy, and America knows that. That's why they've invaded the Ukraine. They've essentially gotten away with it. Germany was not that big country. Germany was a small country without oil reserves. You can't win a war without oil reserves. They were doomed to lose, and yet they started a war. So what did they do? They just caused a big mess, and that was it. That's all it was. A mess. That's all it was. So anyway, I just want to cover some of these points. He talks about policy of racial superiority. Everything goes wrong. And he talks about the Persians, Israel, Germany. People don't like the Germans because they're racist. There are lots of countries that are utterly racist and they get away with it. China's completely racist, and they're fine. The Japanese are racist. Everybody's racist except us. So, you know what I mean? So that's not really a problem, I don't think. And we used to be incredibly racist, and we ruled the world, and it was fine. It was okay. It was better when we were racist. It was better when we had Lothrop Stoddard talking about white supremacy and how we need to maintain it. So I think he's just completely wrong on this guy. He's just saying this because he's not white. Sorry. Tough luck there, buddy. He says if you have a policy of racial superiority, it alienates your allies. No, it doesn't. Allies are interested in real politics. They're interested in oil, gold, money, technology. They don't care about racism. They care about money. That's what they care about. They care about where is your army, where is your military base. He says he thinks you can't be a nationalist if you're in a small country. That's retarded. I used to live in Lithuania. They're very nationalistic. They love their country. It's a small country, but they've got their language. They've got their flag. Even if you're a small country, you should be proud of having your small country, and you should be proud of its culture, and you should be proud of the people and the language, and etc., etc. Of course you should be. What if you're a small country, you should just be a whore? Oh, no, we're a small country. Oh, I don't want to be nationalistic. No, I mean, again, he's not English. So he doesn't want to be proud to be English, I suppose. He says there's lots of fake news in the Tommy-Tard. Yeah, well, there is. I mean, I'll agree with this criticism of Tommy-Tards. Tommy-Tards are called Tommy-Tards for a reason. It's because they're retarded. So, yeah, there is a certain kind of... Yeah, the people that follow Tommy Robinson are not bright. And they fall for a lot of fake news. And they're misled, and etc., etc. I mean, so, yeah, there's obviously that football hooligan element to British politics. I mean, the point is to lead them successfully. and lead them away from the Pied Piper that is Tommy Robinson, not to just reject them completely and then say, oh yeah, I'm centre left now, right? Like, I think the Tommy Robinson supporters are retarded, but I love them and I care for them because they're my people. They're just being misled. The academic agent thinks the Tommy Robinson supporters are retarded and he just wants to ditch them, right? Two different attitudes. And yeah, just to kind of end the video, there's two more points I want to go through. First of all, he talks about capitalism and the free market, and he says support for free markets is stupid. Well, I agree. And there's a lot of people on the right wing that also agree. So it's silly to say that the whole of the right is in favour of free market capitalism. I mean, I just think that's disingenuous, to be honest with you. I'm in favour of protectionism. He makes the point that the British Empire encouraged free market capitalism and the specialisation of economies because it was a way of controlling the empire. And what he meant by this is, say in the old days we had a colony and then we tell that colony to specialise in growing coffee or in growing bananas or whatever, right? They specialise in one industry. Once that country has specialised in that one industry, now it is dependent on the empire essentially to feed itself and to clothe itself and etc., because it's only making one thing. It's only making bananas. It's only making coffee. So it's got to sell the coffee within the constraints of the British Empire so that it can import food and clothing and etc. So the idea of the specialization of your economy is a way of binding you into the global system. Well, he's absolutely correct about this. I completely agree. And there are a lot of people on the right that recognize this, and there are a lot of people on the right that favor some kind of autarky and who are against free market capitalism and who favor protectionism. So yeah, the whole laissez-faire free market capitalism thing is a tool of empire, essentially. That's why it's promoted by the globalists, because it's a way of binding nations together and making them dependent upon each other. I'm against this, and so are many other people. So there you go. And last but not least, he talks about how people on the right are technophobes and they're Luddites. Well, I'm a Luddite, for sure. I think life would have been better. I think Alexander the Great had a great life, and I would have loved to live back in those days, to be honest with you. Perhaps even more. Maybe I'm betraying my Germanic roots here, aren't I? I mean, but they had more sunlight down in the Mediterranean, right? So Greece is nice. Sorry. I don't know, do I want to live in Scandinavia where it's only like there's sunlight for like 3 days of the year? I don't know. Or do I want to be hanging out with Achilles and Hercules and that lot? I don't know. Oh, it's a tricky one. But nonetheless, technology definitely does make you weaker. It makes your mind weaker. It makes your body weaker. It makes you more subservient to a system. Technology, if you want advanced technology, by necessity you have to have precision engineering, which means you have to have globally accepted standards of technology, which means some sort of global authority or agreement, which means factories, which means you're undermining the craftsmanship of individual craft makers. Okay, so nobody just sits down and makes a television. They can get all the different individual parts together and perhaps build a television themselves. It's very difficult, but you can't make stuff yourself in the way that in the ancient world you could make your own sword, you could make your own chair, you could make your own stuff, right? You didn't have to follow an international standard. So the point being that technology does gravitate towards international standards and factory manufacturing and globalism, essentially, because lots and lots of small individual parts made in specialized factories around the world, and they all fit together and work together to build cars and television and etc., etc. So technology is kind of authoritarian in its nature. It's centralizing by its very nature. It's globalizing by its very nature. It makes you weaker because instead of working with your hands, now you get in a car or you sit in an office. It makes your mind weaker. You don't need to memorize stuff anymore because you can just look at stuff on your phone. And it encourages urban lifestyle, and then the urbanites, of course, they're very socially liberal and sexually liberal, and it creates all kinds of problems. Technology is awful. So you should be a technophobe. Now, that being said, can we reject technology? No. We are caught in an arms race. We have to embrace it. Because if we don't develop AI, then the Chinese will, and then they'll dominate everything. And this is the way of the world. This world of ours is caught in a technological arms race. That's it. That's what's going on. And we're being swept along on that tide. And where it's going to lead, I don't know. Will it all collapse at some point? Probably. Hopefully. It's difficult to predict when it's going to happen. Or if it's going to happen. But it's technology is devastating everything. So I absolutely sympathize with people. The only thing you can do is it's like we're on a ride. This is something that we really can't control, to be honest with you. We're on this ride and it's taking us in this direction, and the only thing you can really do is just try and make yourself as safe as possible and hide from the technology as much as you possibly can. Obviously, my solution, as I always say over and over and over again, is we need open source technology. This stops because the thing about the technocrats is they want you to be stupid. They want you to be a mushroom. Bill Gates does not want you to know how to work your computer. He wants you to be an idiot so that you need him. And you need his professional services and his apps and his this, that, and the other to fix your problems. He dislikes open source software because of this. This is their entire model, is to make technology difficult to build, difficult to understand, regardless of whether it's computing technology or physical engineering. They want it to be closed source because they want you to be stupid so that you can't fix stuff and you can't build it yourself. And so that you're dependent on them. Like, oh, it's broke, I'll buy a new one. That's what they want. There's no reason why you shouldn't be driving the same car for 20 or 30 years if you just fix it. Or use well, I guess televisions get bigger, but you should be able to fix your TV. You should be able to fix lots of stuff. You should be able to buy lots of technological items and keep them and use them for 10, 20 years. But we are in a throwaway culture. We are in a planned obsolescence culture, and they want us to be stupid, and it's really bad. So one of the ways we can push back against this technocracy is to make sure everything's open source. That's one of the solutions, and nobody talks about this on the dissident right. I've been talking about it for 10 years. Nobody listens. What can I do? Lead a horse to water, can't make it drink. People don't seem to understand. I bring out the same arguments again and again and again, and people really don't listen to arguments. One thing I can tell you from being on the internet for 10 years is that nobody listens to philosophical arguments. They never answer your arguments, and I never get this. I never get a response where anybody ever says, "Oh, you've made this point, and the answer to that point is this," or "You've made that point, and the answer to that." They just don't do it. People think in mobs, and it's like nobody else on the internet is talking about Linux, and so nobody talks about it, right? And one day everybody will start talking about it, and then everybody will start talking about it. And I'll be sitting there going, I've been talking about this for 10 years. And everyone will be like, well, who are you? You're not famous, so we don't care. And that's it, guys. That's the internet for you. It's all about fame. It's all about fame. If you're famous, your opinion matters. If you're not famous, your opinion doesn't matter, regardless of how good your arguments are. The academic agent is famous. Therefore, his opinion matters, even though he's a complete idiot and a traitor to his country, and he's declared that he's moving over to the left wing. Right? But his opinion still matters somehow because he's famous. Piers Morgan. He's famous, so his opinion matters. Even though everybody knows he's an awful person. I just watched the interview yesterday. Candice Owens. It's so grating to listen to him interviewing Candice Owens because he just talks over her all the time. He's awful. He's awful. And, you know, one of her arguments is that, you know, people are criticizing her for saying there's all these different countries involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And in response, she says, well, it's the same thing with JFK. There are Israelis involved, there's the CIA involved, there's different groups and organizations. And this moron, Piers Morgan, just comes out and says, well, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. And Candice is just like, really? You really think that? It's 2025 and you still think that? And he says, well, it hasn't been proved any different. I mean, this guy is so dumb. This guy is so dumb. How can you, in the year of our Lord, 2025, how can you say that Lee Harvey Oswald kills JFK? Really? Come on. But he's famous, so his opinion matters. Right? And that's it. That's the internet for you. Fame is everything. Fame is... And by the way, I mean, if we're going to talk about the academic agent, wasn't this guy pro-lockdown and pro-vaccination? Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think he was, wasn't he? Like a lot of people, like Morgoth, like Mark Collett, like Richard Spencer. Okay? All of these people are still famous. Their opinions still matter. Why? Because they're famous. And that's the only thing that matters. That's the only thing that matters. How many followers do you have on Twitter? How many followers do you have on YouTube? If you're famous, your opinion matters. Even if you're a complete idiot. Okay? What does Parvini think about 9/11 being an inside job? I mean, this is a real litmus test, isn't it? 25 years later, nearly 25 years later, have people figured out that that was a controlled demolition? Right? It was plastic explosives, and it was boop, 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 boop. The planes did not make the buildings fall down. That is a building that's essentially made of steel. It's a giant steel cage in the sky. You can't knock it down with a plane, and it's certainly not just going to crumble as it did. 25 years later, have people figured this out? I don't see Sargon talking about it. I've never seen Morgoth talk about it. I've never seen Millennial Woes talk about it. This is one of my original complaints when I got involved with the alt-right, because obviously I was part of the truth. Well, I say I was part, but I followed the truth movement, right? The 9/11 truth movement. That was my introduction to politics. And I got involved in the alt-right in 2016. I was just shocked to see this entire generation of people. They're complaining about racism, anti-white racism and feminism and all the rest of it, which was good, because Alex Jones and David Icke never really talked about that stuff. And I was like, wow, somebody's talking about the social problems. This is great. But those people would if you'd said 9/11 was an inside job, they'd call you a conspiracy tard. Right? A conspiracy tard. And so it's like, oh, a new generation's popped up, and I don't know, it's like some bait and switch. It's like we spent 10 years on the internet making everybody understand that 9/11 was an inside job, and then all of a sudden everything shifts, and now everybody's talking about the Jews, which is great. It's great, but it's like we forgot the other half. Like, nobody even follows the Bilderberg group around anymore. They used to be a big thing. So people just forget stuff. I swear to God, in 10 years' time, we'll be talking about something else, and people will forget all about Israel. They'll forget about the Gaza genocide. It will be memory hold. I swear to God, it will be memory hold. And people will say, oh, remember 10 years ago when everybody was talking about the Jewish question because of the Gaza genocide, but it's okay now because Benjamin Netanyahu, he's not president of Israel anymore, and they locked him in. They put him in house arrest, yeah? Netanyahu was put under house arrest in Israel. So the Israelis fixed that problem, and now everybody's happy with the Jews again. I mean, that's what it's going to be in 10 years' time. I swear to God. And famous people with no integrity who are proven wrong again and again and again, they'll just remain. They'll just be these talking heads sitting on the internet, spewing out nonsense and getting away with it. Like Piers Morgan, right? The academic agent will transform into Piers Morgan. Okay? This is the lesson of this video. This is the ultimate lesson of this video. It doesn't matter what you say, as long as you're famous, and then you'll just get away with it. You'll get away with your nonsense again and again and again and again. And that's it. It's quite sad, isn't it, really? But there you go. What can you do? I will sit here screaming into the abyss because I enjoy it. I figured that out a long time ago. I just enjoy it. So, I mean, it's a hobby, right? So anyway, there you go. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Have a good day. Go out. Get some sunshine. Okay? And thank you very much. And like the video. Share. Subscribe. Contact me on Twitter. I'm surprised no one... I guess it's just the way the internet is. But if you want to send me a DM on the internet, send me a DM. I don't know why people don't. Some people do, every now and again. But send us a DM and leave a comment below. I do like to read the comments. Okay? And I do try to reply. Sometimes I forget. But anyway, alright. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye. Bye.